The crossroads of power, Russia's strategy, China's leverage, and America's erosion of dominance. The United States stands at the precipice of a geopolitical and economic shift unlike anything it has faced in modern history. For decades, America has relied on its dominance in global trade, military power, and economic stability to maintain its position as the world's leading superpower. But Russia's calculated strategy to dominate the Black Sea and global grain trade, paired with China's rising economic leverage and its ambitions to secure Taiwan, threatens to upend this fragile balance. Together, these moves have set into motion a domino effect that may redefine the global order and leave the United States struggling to adapt to a world in which it no longer holds the reins of power. Russia's Black Sea strategy, the first domino. At the heart of this unfolding strategy lies Russia's campaign to dominate Ukraine, particularly through its methodical actions along the Dnipro River. The Dnipro is not just a battlefield, but a strategic gateway. Russian forces have spent months building up along the river's banks, preparing for an imminent offensive that will aim to cross the river and sever Ukraine's last connections to the sea. By doing so, Russia would achieve two critical objectives: landlocking Ukraine, effectively crippling its economy, and consolidating total control over the Black Sea. This is more than a territorial gain, it is the linchpin of a much larger economic strategy. Ukraine's fertile fields make it one of the world's largest exporters of grain, responsible for feeding millions worldwide. By taking control of Ukraine's grain exports, Russia would dominate the global grain market, consolidating 70 to 80% of the planet's exportable grain supply. This dominance would give Russia immense leverage over nations dependent on these supplies, from Africa and the Middle East to Asia. This move would also align Russia even more closely with China, the world's largest importer of grain and agricultural products. By meeting China's vast food security needs, Russia would cement its position as an indispensable ally to Beijing. The United States, meanwhile, would find itself sidelined, its influence eroded as nations realigned their economic dependencies to accommodate a new reality: China's food security. Severing dependence on the U.S. China's reliance on American agricultural exports has long been one of its most significant vulnerabilities. With a population of over 1.4 billion and a history of devastating famines, food security is a critical priority for Beijing. For years, China has depended on the United States to meet much of its demand for grain and farm products. However, with Russia poised to dominate the global grain trade, China sees an opportunity to sever this dependency once and for all. By aligning itself with Russia, China ensures a stable supply of grain that bypasses the United States entirely. This move would free Beijing from the economic pressure Washington might attempt to exert in response to its geopolitical ambitions, particularly regarding Taiwan. With its food security no longer reliant on American imports, China would face no meaningful economic consequences for advancing its military and territorial goals. The Taiwan connection. The second domino's ambitions in Taiwan represent one of the greatest geopolitical flashpoints of the 21st century. Taiwan is not merely a symbol of national pride for Beijing, it is a linchpin of the global economy. The island produces approximately 85% of the world's semiconductors, the tiny chips that power virtually every modern technology, from televisions and smartphones to refrigerators, cars, computers, weapons systems, and even space technology. The United States, like the rest of the world, is utterly dependent on these semiconductors for its technological infrastructure and defense capabilities. If China were to seize Taiwan, it would gain control over this critical industry, cementing its dominance in global supply chains and forcing the United States into a position of unprecedented vulnerability. Every major product made today relies on semiconductors, and with Taiwan under Beijing's control, the U.S. would find itself at the mercy of China for its most basic technological needs. Unsecured strength gradient, a clear path for Beijing, with its food security ensured through Russian grain and its economic leverage over the U.S. and other nations firmly in place. China would have no meaningful obstacles to launching an offensive to take Taiwan. The United States, already weakened by its over-reliance on Chinese imports for consumer goods and industrial components, would face an insurmountable challenge in responding to such a move. Currently, the American economy relies heavily on Chinese manufactured goods. Televisions, electronics, refrigerators, cars, computers, and even critical defense and space technologies all depend on Chinese supply chains. Should Beijing choose to cut off these imports, the United States would plunge into chaos, with industries across the board grinding to a halt. This dependency leaves America with little leverage to counter Chinese aggression in Taiwan. Even if the U.S. were to attempt military intervention, the consequences would be dire. The economic fallout from severed trade ties with China, combined with the disruption of semiconductor production in Taiwan, would devastate the American economy and cripple its technological infrastructure. This reality creates an unsecured strength gradient for China, an imbalance of power in which Beijing can act with confidence, knowing that the United States lacks the means to meaningfully respond. The domino effect, a new global order. The combination of Russia's dominance of the Black Sea and global grain trade, paired with China's control of Taiwan and its semiconductor industry, would reshape the global order. Together, these moves would establish a new axis of power, with Russia and China dictating terms to a world that has long relied on American leadership. Russia's grain dominance would provide it with leverage over nations dependent on food imports, forcing them to align with Moscow's interests or face starvation. China's control of Taiwan's semiconductors would give it unparalleled influence over global technology, effectively placing the U.S. and its allies in a position of subservience. For the United States, the implications are clear. Its dominance is no longer guaranteed. The assumptions of post-war permanence, of unassailable military and economic power, are crumbling in the face of coordinated strategies from adversaries who have spent decades preparing for this moment. The American response, adapt or collapse, the United States is at a critical juncture. To remain relevant in this new global order, it must confront its vulnerabilities with honesty and urgency. Domestically, the U.S. rebuild its manufacturing base, address economic inequality, and invest in infrastructure, education, and technological innovation to reduce its reliance on foreign supply chains. Globally, it must develop a coherent strategy for countering the coordinated efforts of Russia and China, recognizing that these challenges are interconnected and require unified responses. The era of unchallenged American supremacy is over. The choices made today will determine whether the United States can adapt to this new reality or whether it will continue down a path of decline, leaving its fate in the hands of others. Conclusion: learning from the dominoes already falling, Russia's methodical buildup along the Dnipro River is not just a tactical maneuver. It is the first domino in a cascade of events that could redefine global power. As Russia consolidates its control over the Black Sea and Ukraine's grain exports, and as China aligns itself with Moscow while positioning itself to take Taiwan, the United States is a stark reality. Its dominance is no longer a given. The dominoes are already falling. The question now is whether the United States can learn from history and adapt, or whether it will be consumed by the very system it once controlled. Time is running out and the stakes could not be higher.